Mark. We're going to move on now to the second player we're going to look at, a guy that's in his second season in the NBA, went to the Portland Trail Blazers last year, was not supposed to play as much as he did through injuries and opportunity. He ended up averaging 18 minutes a game, getting a bit over 9 points per game, nearly 4 rebounds and an assist. I'm talking, of course, of the man that everyone wanted to see in the Olympics but didn't play as many minutes as Australians would have liked to have seen. Duop Reath is entering a season in Portland where he's now all of a sudden in a very similar situation to a guy we won't talk about at length, Jock Landale, in that he's behind 2 guys that his team wants to see play bigger minutes this season. So it's going to have to be a situation for Duop where he needs to see either DeAndre Ayton or Donovan Clingan injured or traded in order to gain the opportunity again. And, of course, DeAndre Ayton could very well be traded based on the fact that the Clingan is seen as the heir apparent at centre, and Portland's obviously put a great deal of stock in him, drafting him in the first round. But for Duop, it's going to be really difficult for him to either play beside one of those guys, the 4, or alternatively get opportunities ahead of them. He's certainly not going to get them ahead of them based on what they're paid and the stock that the Blazers have placed in them.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. He's in that paradox where he doesn't have the big money. That's like, if you're big money, you're going to play, or he doesn't have the first round grade like Clingan, or the top 10 grade where like you're definitely going to be invested in and paid. And I think he's in that tough spot where he came through last year. He showed something. He showed he could play in this league. Like, unlike the thing we just talked about with Giddey, like his shooting translates in a big way, and his shooting changes the math for his team, and it opens up things for him on the court. And so, I think him being a 5-man and being where he creates the biggest advantage for his team and for spacing and things like that, and playing behind a big money 5 guy and a top 10 pick 5 guy, I think that's going to be really difficult for him to find his way on the floor in his most advantageous position. But when he gets out there, I have no doubt that he's going to let it rip, because one thing that I learned about him, A, prepping for the Olympics, and then B, watching the Olympics, Duop Reath is not scared to shoot the ball.
Not at all. And the pick and pop, is a weapon that can be deployed by any NBA team that chooses to enlist the services of Duop Reath, because another team could need a center all of a sudden and could come a calling and offer the Trailblazers a future second or something to try and bring him on board. I mean, I'm an Indiana Pacers fan. James Wiseman just tore his Achilles. Really tough break for the Pacers, but a guy that can shoot it from outside and play the 5 position, hey, that's kind of what they're starting with Miles Turner. So you could see Duop potentially get an opportunity on the trade table as well.
Yeah, I think what Duop established last year is that he is at the level of an NBA shooter, and he's at an above average level of an NBA 5-man shooter. And so I think he can continuously get better at coverages defense wise. He can continuously get better at learning how to play the NBA game, but he's already shown that he has one skill that is incredibly valuable, and it's even more valuable at the position he plays. This is a defensive player of the year. He's just stepping out, shooting threes on him. And that skill can create spacing and can create a curveball that any team can throw. And so I think Duop Reath can play on all 30 teams. There's no team that would be like, oh man, we wouldn't really like him as our backup 5-man or our third center on the roster, break in case of emergency. And so I think Duop's going to have a really long NBA career. And I'm pretty excited for him, because I think when he gets a shot, as we saw last year, he's never going to be scared of the moment. He's going to be genuinely himself. He has an incredible confidence in the work he's put in and the skill that he has of shooting the ball. And I think he's only going to get better and better at being more comfortable in the NBA game and understanding how to plug up his disadvantages in terms of defense and athleticism and things like that, and to lean further into his advantage of shooting the ball.
Strikes me as really interesting that the 2 guys in front of him are fundamentally opposite his strengths as well. They're close to the basket, bangers, rebounders, those guys that do their best work as close to the hoop as humanly possible. It's interesting, because if that's the way that Chauncey Billups wants to play in Portland, then it's an interesting decision to carry Duop as your third center because he's, a point of difference. He's completely different to those two guys. What goes into roster construction in that way, in having sort of two centers? You put a lot of stock in, and obviously it's a rebuilding roster, so it's not an optimal roster, but it's an interesting sort of center bullpen that they have.
Yeah, I think you can probably see the writing on the wall that DeAndre Ayton is not long for there. You don't draft a guy in the top 10 that plays that position. So Klingen's going to be cost controlled for 4 years minimum, and then you don't have to pay him until 4 years down the road. I think they're probably searching for a way to showcase Aiden so that some other team says, oh man, you know what? We really need this guy, and they can get him out of there without attaching assets to him. But I think you could see the writing on the wall of we're going in this one direction. But even though they're going in that direction, if you stash Aiden, it's not really saying this is a value.
Work.
Yeah. You can't give the playbook away being like, well, this guy isn't long for us. We don't really love him. So, and you can't bring him off the bench because that also says, the writing's on the wall. So you got to play the game. You got to do the charade, do the dance, be like, no, that's our guy. We love him. We still believe in him. But do you want him?
So what you're saying is if you're in a fantasy league, then trade for DeAndre Ayton for the next 4 weeks or so and then trade him immediately away before he is sent to Charlotte or Golden State or one of those other teams that don't have a bona fide starting center guy. Yeah. There's a couple of those. New Orleans is another one. They're in desperate need of some sort of center. I saw Eves Missy had a great game for them in his first outing.
So bouncy.
Yeah. It was really, really good.